Hey, welcome everyone to our live webinar on Vaadin 24.9 release. And this time we are actually going to have a look into the entire Vaadin 24.x release series. And we are also going to have a look on the upcoming major release Vaadin 25 as well. My name is Mika Andersson. I'm a product marketing manager here, and today I'm with Leif Ostrand, our VP of Research. And before I'll give the microphone to Leif, I just wanted to mention that in the end of this session, we are going to have a really sweet discount deal for all the participants of this webinar to our upcoming Vaadin Create conference in Frankfurt. So stay tuned, stay until the very end of this session, and you have a really sweet deal available. But now the stage is yours, Leif.
Thank you. So let's take, I got maybe a little bit overboard with the timelines for today, but here we go with the first timeline. So this is kind of all of Vaadin 24 squeezed into just a couple of pixels on the screen. So Vaadin 24 really started in March 2023, so that's kind of 2.5 years ago roughly. And right now we're there at the 24.9 mark in September this year, and we're really close to Vaadin 25 in December this year. So kind of rather than just talking about Vaadin 24.9 here, we thought it would be, like Mika already said, good to put this in a slightly broader context. So we got basically three main parts of the agenda. The first, the kind of left-hand chunk there with 24.02 until 24.9, and then we're going to look at what's new in 24.9, and then also look at the right edge with what goes on beyond Vaadin 24. In addition to that, we will of course also take questions. We should probably do that in between also if there are any questions already at that point. And then also at the end have some time reserved for that. So 24.x, like I said, it kind of started 2.5 years ago, and it's been steady improvement since that. We no longer do software releases the way you did Windows 95 or Windows XP with kind of everything collected into that huge big release, but instead we do kind of the opposite. So we start with a huge version change, like from 23 to 24, for instance, and then that's just the beginning of the 24 series, and then we keep adding lots and lots of things. So most of the things I consider to be Vaadin 24 features, they didn't exist in Vaadin 24.0, but they have been added in later releases after that. The technology baseline, when we went from 23 to 24, we upgraded from minimum Java 11 required, newer were also supported, to minimum Java 17. Switching from Java EE7 baseline to Jakarta EE10, that might have been a little bit of disruptive things since you needed to actually upgrade your application server at the same time, because most servers didn't support both at the same time. And then also related to that same thing, going from Spring Boot to Spring Boot 2 to Spring Boot 3. The Vaadin 23 technologies, I would say, kind of time-wise, they are all over the place. So Java EE7 actually came out already in 2013, so that's already ancient. Whereas Java 11, for instance, and Spring Boot 2, they were both for 2018, which were already 4 years old when that happened. But then starting from Vaadin 24, we kind of make a clean cut, so to say, going with relatively relevant and modern technologies throughout. So the oldest there was Java 17, which was 2 years old roughly when Vaadin 24 was released. So what has been happening now? Like I said, kind of most of the new things have been after 24.0 and being gradually introduced incrementally throughout the series. One big theme is, of course, the UI components. So we have got a bunch of new UI components, starting from the side nav to show kind of what you typically want to have in the navigation sidebar of an application. We got the pop hour component for these kinds of small things that pop out from some other component. So they could be used for tooltips or for more customizable context menus and those kinds of things. We got the dashboard component for really visualizing different kind of dashboard widgets, which typically contain charts or things like that, but you can put anything in them. There's the card component with kind of some image maybe on the top, some heading, some content, and very flexible with what exactly you can put into those different parts of that card. We got the Gantt chart addition to the Vaadin charts component, so that's a huge new functionality there. And then rich text formatting through a dedicated markdown component to be able to render anything with rich formatting, but in a way that is safe from the worst cross-site injection, cross-site scripting injection attacks, and so on. In addition to these purely visual components, there's also been lots of things improved with how the components work. So there's been accessibility improvements throughout, CSS styling things. So 24.0 introduced part-based selectors so that most of your CSS no longer needed to be inside the shadow root. Continue with that with component-specific CSS custom properties like Vaadin input field background, for instance, to customize the background color of the Vaadin text field and all those kinds of things. There's been grid performance improvements, for instance, adding lazy column support so that columns that are not shown don't need to be actually rendered at all, and those kinds of things. Framework-wise, I've identified 3 different themes. The first theme is to optimize your development experience. We added pre-compiled bundles to speed up startup. So if you're just using the default built-in components, there's no need to download any client-side dependencies and manage those, but instead everything comes ready for you in development mode by default. And that also got to production bundles, so that you also can do a production build really quickly as long as you use just the built-in components. Then we optimized the redeploy experience to make it faster from making a change to actually having it running and seeing the changes of that. And then also further improving that by integrating more tightly with JRebel or HotSwap agent to be able to see most changes immediately when you save your file without even having to redeploy anything. And that then further just makes the development experience much more fast and smooth. Then for the application running in production, there's adding lazy loaded front-end dependencies. So basically, if you actually create a production bundle, instead of using the pre-bundled one, you can also build your own. And then it optimizes that based on which components are used in which part of the application, so that when the user just loads the initial page of the application, which is typically just the login view for most applications, then it would only need to download the components used on that initial view. And then as you navigate through the application, you would download the JavaScript for more of those components incrementally. We also optimize memory usage. So thanks to using a new-ish web standard named Beacon, we can now much better unload the UI from server-side memory immediately when the user closes the tab or navigates away, instead of waiting for a timeout for that. It doesn't work in all cases, but in many cases it can be optimized in that way. Last thing on the production optimization was we added native image support for Quarkus. That was previously also available for Spring Boot, and now Quarkus is also supported for that. The last framework theme I would say is balancing between having web features available, but at the same time acknowledging that our users are Java developers, so these things should be available through a Java API also. So we've been adding web push notifications to be able to push out updates to the user even if they don't have the application open, as long as they have subscribed to those updates. We made the messaging between the client and the server more fault tolerant, so even if some message is lost due to TCP issues or so on, then in most cases the application can recover from that instead of needing to reload the whole state. Then one big thing, we added Hilla for client-side views, so you can use React and Hilla to build whole views in the application, whereas other parts of the application can still be using flow and server-side views. Related to that, but quite separate, we also added support for taking existing either third-party React components or React components that you have built yourself and really easily use them as part of flow views. And then finally, just in 24.8, so a quarter ago, we updated the upload and download handling so that you just handle those requests as they come in without any extra abstractions in between if you don't want to, and then providing helpers for making it really easy to do that also for simple cases like uploading to a file or just downloading something that you have as a file on the server. Last thing I'm going to mention is the addition of Copilot, which in one way it's a new thing, in one way it's not, because all the time we've been having dev mode extras in Vaadin. So initially the dev mode things just allowed you to see what versions am I running. Then we added component locators so that you could select a component and go to the source where it was defined. And then we really kind of doubled down on that to make it its own thing. We named it Copilot, which is maybe a little bit confusing because it does much more than what you would expect from other products named Copilot, because it's really kind of all the things you need in development mode. So getting an outline of the component hierarchy that is rendered, instant access to documentation for the component you select. You can adjust the sizing and positioning of components visually, immediately see the outcome, but with the really cool technology behind it that it updates your existing Java or React code rather than requiring you to define those components with a dedicated template structure. There's Figma imports, there's screenshot to code generation, accessibility checking, extracting parts of the UI that are not translated to change that into having translation strings, UI test generation. And then there's also the AI-based kind of prompt that you would expect from something named Copilot. So it's a whole big thing, but I like to think of it as just development mode on steroids. I guess
And
that's the summary
it
of
sure is.
24x.
Yeah, I think the Copilot is an awesome addition because it's so different from other similar tools, because it allows you to actually operate on the running application, not on the IDE, but you actually are working on the live application. So it's really cool thing. Now,
Yep.
Leif, I must ask you, since it's been a long journey, the entire 24.x release. So what is your favorite component that we've released under the 24.x umbrella?
So favorite, you mean out of the UI components?
UI component, yes.
I think card is my favorite
Cool.
because it's been a very, very frequently wished for component. And we've been saying that, yeah, we get it, but at the same time, it's so easy to build it on your own. It's just like a couple of lines of CSS, and actually building a generic one with all the different configurability options, that's a huge thing. But when you know that I want my cards to look in this way, then it's relatively easy to build it. But I think the team building that component and kind of designing the API for it and thinking really through what are all the bells and whistles or the things they should be able to configure, I think it's really kind of, it blew my mind because you can actually play with it in the documentation. I mean, that's from where I got the screenshot I had on that slide. Uh, and there you can really kind of customize that. Wait, if I see it again, yeah, there. So you can just in the documentation see kind of what happens if I change the image mode to be different, or what if I hide and show subtitles and all these things. And I mean, it's really impressive.
It is, and it's a funny thing because having seen how it has been designed, it's at first we thought that, well, this is fairly trivial. Anyone can just implement it on their own. But once we really got into that, we noticed that, hey, there are actually quite a lot of different configurations and different permutations. You can create your card in different shapes and sizes and whatnot. So that was really cool. However, I personally really like the dashboard component. It's a major time saver. It gives you a really nice way to arrange your views the way you want, and I think that's just brilliant. And based on the chat, it looks like I'm not the only one. Hey, if you have any questions during the presentation, please ask, and we try to address those as we go. And we actually do have one question here for you, Leif. So will Java 25 be on 24.x?
Yes, I mean, all Vaadin versions, to my knowledge, are fully forward compatible with regards to Java versions. So you can take a Vaadin 8 application and run it on Java 25 just like that. That's mostly, I mean, we don't even do much to enable that. It's mostly just thanks to the way the OpenJDK is so kind of doing a really great job with both backward and forward compatibility. We need to do some small things like make sure that we are compatible with newer Spring versions because they have some bytecode scanning that needs to be updated and so on. But otherwise, everything just works. So yes, Vaadin 24 and Vaadin 23 and Vaadin 14 and Vaadin 10 and Vaadin 8 and probably also Vaadin 7, they all worked with Java 25 on the day Java 25 was released.
Cool. Yeah, that's certainly the benefit of standing on the shoulders of giants, having all those good things coming almost for free. How about this one?
Payara, Java 25, and Vaadin. I must say I'm not exactly sure what that refers to. The Payara server is, I mean, it's a Jakarta EE server, so I would expect it to be just compatible like that. But I don't remember explicitly checking it. But if it's not compatible, then it's either a bug on our side or on the Payara side, and we should just have that fixed then.
Cool. Let me take one more question. Roadmap dev mode for Eclipse users.
Yes. So we when we started building Copilot, we realized that there's a couple of things with Copilot that really benefit from IDE integration. There's two things. One is being able to tell the IDE when something has changed, because otherwise the IDE might not immediately recompile the file in the background. And the other is undo and redo integration. So we built both of those initially as plugins for VS Code and IntelliJ. And then we also added some additional things like running through HotSwap agent really easily, starting a new Vaadin project through the ID and so on. And we actually right now in beta, we have the same also for Eclipse. So I think we posted it somewhere. If not, I should make sure we do it. So you can try it out already now. The plan is to officially launch this as part of Vaadin 25, but there's already a pre-release out there, and that works also with all the Vaadin versions. So you can use it with Vaadin 24 already today.
Nice. I said that was the last question, but I'm sorry, I just have to take this one as well. So, Leif, can you share? Are there any performance optimization in this release or the entire 24 release series?
Yeah, I mean, I also mentioned a couple of those, like grid performance. Lazy columns was one big thing, but we also did. I mean, we had basically a small mini project where we just said, let's take a couple of grid-related benchmarks and just do all we can to improve them. So there were also lots of other improvements that just work automatically. Lazy columns need to be enabled by default because it has impacts for screen reader users and so on. Also, like I mentioned, the production bundle optimization is one thing. UI session cleanup more aggressively is one thing. So there's different things here and there. I think there's also a bunch of smaller things that I don't remember right now, but those are at least a couple of big ones.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on the feedback that I've read online from users, it seems that there has been actually quite a few improvements in this area that has made it quite visible that things are going forward in this sense. So yeah, absolutely. If you're using an older version, upgrade today and enjoy these benefits.
Yep.
All right, let's move on, shall we?
Yeah. I mean, commenting, I see there's a couple of questions about Vaadin 25 for instance, also, but let's take those slightly later. Next, let's have a look at what are the things that we are releasing now in Vaadin 24.9. So first, kind of yet another timeline. Like said, I got inspired by those, and then there's 3 features that I want to highlight also from what we're doing. So what really happens with Vaadin 24.9? If you look at the list of new features and so on, it's maybe a little bit smaller than the typical list. And the reason for this is really that, yes, we do one release every quarter, but this quarter, because the following release will be Vaadin 25, which is in many ways bigger and has some things that we want to be extra careful with. So we have actually spent most of the time during this quarter to work towards Vaadin 25. We will do, hopefully, beta just next week. We're still missing some things, so we might have to postpone. We'll see about that. But anyways, we because of that preparation, we haven't done as much features to 24.9 as to the previous minor releases. But there's still some. So first thing I want to mention is simplifying how you can try out the commercial Vaadin features. So now, starting from 24.9, if you use anything that would require commercial license and you don't have it, then you immediately just click that button, start a 7-day trial. No questions asked. You don't need to log in. You don't need to do anything. It just lets you keep using things for 7 days without any worries at all. And we will even occasionally reset that also so that you will have it available again if you kind of come back 1 year later and forgot everything you did last time. Then beyond that, we got the regular 30-day trial that, yes, you need to log into Vaadin and so on to get that. And then finally also, if you want to be able to run things in production mode, now we're introducing this commercial with banner option that you can do when you build a production build. And with that, all the commercial features are available without being tied to any trial or anything, but the application will show a banner saying that kind of this is unlicensed, blah blah blah, and so on. So in that way you can still like create some demos for your stakeholders or whatever, even before you have actually purchased a license. And then we assume that you will want to get rid of that banner, and that you do by actually getting that license for your actual deployments. Next thing, component enhancements related to tooltips. This also should be mentioned. This has mostly been done based on customers actually sponsoring development of those specific features. So these are in one way very important features because you show to us how important they are to you by actually sponsoring us to kind of prioritize these higher than what they would have been prioritized otherwise. These are maybe quite small, but like I said, still important for specific use cases. So the first thing is the side nav component now gets support for setting tooltips for individual items in the menu. Next thing is that you with an attribute in the DOM to anything that has a tooltip, so that you can in CSS make those things look different depending on your UI design. And then finally, there's a low-level DOM event that you can use to detect if the content of the tooltip changes. Last thing to mention is Vaadin web security that is now being deprecated. So already a couple of releases ago, we introduced Vaadin security configurer, which is based on the new approach that Spring Security has introduced for configuring everything related to security. So we will remove support for Vaadin web security in Vaadin 25. You can look in the documentation already now for instructions on how to use, or examples on how to use the new Vaadin security configurer API, and that API is also such that it will be compatible with future Spring Security versions also. Oh, I was quick. That was everything for 24.9, which was released exactly 1 week ago.
Yes. And going through the chat, not seeing any questions specific to Vaadin 24.9. So assuming that we can continue and take some further questions that are more geared towards the Vaadin 25 release.
Okay.
Good.
So, Vaadin 25, the thing that we have all been waiting for. Again, we're going to get a timeline. We're going to see what the technology baseline looks for this. Then there's 2 new features that I want to highlight right here, right now. There's more to come also, but these are maybe the coolest ones. And then also a little bit kind of what happens before, beyond Vaadin 25.0 in the 25.1, 2, 3, and so on releases. So with 25, we will continue in exactly the same fashion. We got in one way kind of the .0 release is nasty release. This is where we make those breaking changes that we need to be doing to have a good foundation to build on for upcoming things. There will definitely be some exciting new things, but yes, it might require some adjustments to your application to upgrade to this one also. But then beyond that, that's when the actual exciting things start. So then we will do same quarterly releases that we have been doing also with Vaadin 24. We haven't planned exactly how long that will continue until we say now it's time for Vaadin 26. We expect it to be 1 to 2 years. I mean, Vaadin 23 to 24 was exactly 1 year. Vaadin 24 to 25 was kind of 2.5 years. So something in that ballpark. Exactly when will be based on, like, is there a new Spring Boot version upcoming, and things like that are outside of our control, and we'll have to wait and see a little bit before we plan anything specific there. Vaadin 24 continues though. So there will be a 6-month overlap after 25 is released while Vaadin 24 is maintained completely for free. And then after 6 months, we will flip the switch so that upcoming Vaadin 24 releases after that are require commercial subscription. We will not stop doing minor releases, but the minor releases we do will be more based on features from Vaadin 25 that customers want us to backport to 24, because those customers haven't been able to upgrade to 25 for different reasons, but they still want to have access to specific new features. That also means that beyond that kind of breaking point in June, we don't have a fixed schedule, but it will instead be based on when and what we actually will be backporting, and that's mostly based on customer demand. Looking further into the future, like with previous Vaadin, so to say, long-term support versions, we are committed to maintaining Vaadin 24 for a total of 15 years since the initial release. So that's 2023 until 2038. There will be many minor releases along that way. One thing to also mention is that once 25 is out, we will be very careful with what we're backporting to really reduce the risk of any regressions, any backwards incompatibility problems, which means that in some cases we might say that unfortunately we can't take the risk of backporting this feature, but it also means that if you remain on the commercially supported Vaadin 24 release, then there will be very low risks for you with regards to upgrades. Technology-wise, we're again making some adjustments to the version numbers. So Java 21 will be the oldest supported Java version, but we will also keep supporting newer ones also. Jakarta EE11 will be the baseline on that side, and then for Spring we're updating to Spring Boot 4, which is still not even released, but they aim for November and we aim for December, so we will have a little bit of margin there also. So far there's been a little bit of breaking changes and things to adjust for in every milestone release, but hopefully that will also stabilize. We're also making a big change in how the built-in Vaadin components are implemented. So with Vaadin 25, all the built-in components are based on lit instead of Polymer. You can still keep using Polymer-based web components because it's just a web component, but all the built-in ones will use lit, which means that if you use a Polymer component, then at that point the Polymer library will also be included to slightly increase the size of the JavaScript bundle. Whereas with Vaadin 24 it was the opposite. If you choose to use anything lit, then that will slightly increase the bundle size. We're also changing the JSON library. So we have already been making preparations for this in 24.9 releases to use Jackson instead of the older elemental JSON library. And now with Vaadin 25, we are making the last changes that cannot be done without breaking changes. So probably some add-ons doing more low-level JSON manipulation might also have some needs to update there, but in most cases it will be quite transparent because it's a low-level detail. About the new features that we're certain about, one is that now we're definitely getting to the point where themes in Vaadin applications, they are just regular CSS. So technically that has been the case already with Vaadin 24, that you could do everything with just regular CSS, but we're really kind of eating our own dog food here. So the built-in themes will also be using only regular CSS, nothing injected to the shadow DOM or anything like that. There's still some base styles in the shadow DOMs, but they will be there all the time, so not even configurable by the application. What that means also is that we no longer need a dedicated @theme annotation that also impacts what JavaScript is included in the bundle and so on. But all the styles of the application, both the base theme and any customizations done in the application, they can be loaded just using the style sheet annotation or even dynamically. So we have this. Why isn't the video showing it? Or is it? Yeah, it's shown in the screen. So it's just the mirroring doesn't show it. That's right. So we actually see here an example where on the fly we can change completely different themes, and that's something that has been quite much asked for, but wasn't possible when there were also JavaScript bundled differences between the themes. Related to this also, we're building a completely new visual theme that will be the new default. The old Valo theme will still remain. No, Lumo, excuse me. Valo was in Vaadin 8. Lumo is in Vaadin 24. So Lumo will remain. We will remove the material theme though, but we're also launching this new Aura theme. This is based on the Star Pass demo that we built a couple of years ago. And many of you have been asking that, hey, can you share the sources for this demo because it looks so cool and I want to build something similar. That demo was full of very ugly workarounds because kind of we didn't have the foundation in place. But now we're actually taking all those things and extracting them into a proper new default theme for Vaadin. And this theme, it's beautiful, modern, and so on, and it's really, really customizable. So there's a whole long list of things that you can adjust. We had those also with Lumo, but much more with the new Aura theme. So almost everything can be customizable very easily here. Finally, before we wrap up, what will come in future Vaadin 25 releases? So 25.1, 25.2, and so on. To be honest, I don't know, because we are really doing this incrementally based on feedback we get, based on things that change in the ecosystem and so on. So we haven't made any specific plans, but there's still a couple of themes that I'm quite sure we will do something around. First thing on my list is just continue with this. The theme is just a regular CSS file approach. So we will also integrate or make Tailwind available directly in Vaadin. This is something we hope to do for 25.0, but doesn't seem like it will be ready on time. So we now think that it will maybe be behind a feature flag in 25.0, and then 25.1 or something it will be officially supported. Then, of course, new UI components. Again, nothing specific planned, but some ideas include badge component, making the virtual list component support also multiple columns, an inline date picker, probably something else that I'm forgetting right now. One thing I saw, it was already a comment about that also in the discussion, is reactive UI state management based on signals. So this won't be ready for 25.0. Since we keep it as a preview feature, we will allow ourselves to continue iterating on it also during the beta period for Vaadin 25. So we hope, we're not yet there, but we hope to have it quite feature complete when we actually get to 25.0 in December. And if that is the case, then we should be able to finalize things and drop the feature flag and say that now it's officially supported for 25.1. But that still remains to be seen, but I'm still optimistic on that one. Then another kind of a little bit more fluffy theme is to see that, well, lots of people want to use AI agents when they build applications, and that also includes building Vaadin applications. So one thing we have now as a kind of preview thing is an MCP server that you can hook in to make the agent more aware of how Vaadin works. Then we also realize that yeah, these agents, they have no idea what they're doing because they have no way of kind of testing the application. So we should definitely look into how to make testing Vaadin applications in general easier, and that will definitely also have a big impact for AI agent users. And then the last thing that I'm aware of in this theme is API designed by hallucinations. So when you use AI agents, every now and then they invent some convenient APIs that don't exist. And that's usually a sign that it would be a good API to have. So we should probably add that API also so that those hallucinations will actually work in the future. And then, of course, lots of smaller improvements here and there, and we'll just see what that is when we get to it. These things, there will be documentation, upgrade guides, webinars on specific features, lots of things coming later. So this is just a quick sneak peek. And then as things get ready, we will definitely come back to lots of these things also.
That was a interesting insight into the API design.
Yep, it sounds weird, but it makes lots of sense actually. And
Yeah.
I mean, we can take credit for inventing this concept, but it seems quite useful.
Yeah, I'm big fan of vibe coding myself, and I oftentimes notice that coming up with new APIs is definitely something that does happen.
Yep.
Awesome. Hey, we've got quite a bunch of questions here. Let's start tackling these one by one. Let's start with this one. So, upgrading from earlier version to the 25, and in this particular case, 23.5. How to upgrade to 25? Will there be a tutorial?
Mm, Probably not a dedicated tutorial for that combination of versions, but we already have a guide for upgrading from 23 to 24, and there will definitely be a guide for updating from 24 to 25. And I'm not aware of any big parts where kind of what you would do in between would be redundant. So it's very valid to do that step by step. First 23 to 24 and then 24 to 25.
Yep. Yeah, based on my experience, it seems that the recent release is 23, 24. Yeah, I guess it's going to be a fairly smooth ride. Um,
Fairly smooth, but there will always be something.
of
And it's
course,
very hard to predict what it will be in your specific case.
yeah. The more complex your project is, the more likelier it is that you will notice something.
Yeah. And that's also actually a reason why, from a kind of project management perspective, you you reduce your risks if you do it 23 to 24 first and then make sure you have everything covered there, and then you can do 24 to 25 as a separate project, because then you have two smaller projects instead of one big project, and that's just easier to handle in many ways.
Yeah. And talking about preparing for the upcoming 25 release, I guess we are fairly close to the beta release on 25. And
Yeah,
I think that's one extremely convenient way to get ready for the big one. So starting to plan ahead.
yeah, I mean, even just in within Vaadin 24, there are things that we know will change and that already have replacements in place, like for instance the web security configurer that I mentioned. So in that case, just update to the latest 24 release, so 24.9, and get rid of any deprecations you have, and then you are already kind of halfway through it.
The more you do it, the easier it'll be.
Yep.
Cool. Let's well, we briefly touched base on the performance side, but are there particular performance improvements we are expecting to see with Java 25?
To be honest, I haven't looked. I expect there to be, especially especially if you use the new ahead of time compilation features. So in dev mode, not in dev mode, but in the as part of your production build, you do a kind of trial run collecting all kind of metrics that the JVM collects to be able to optimize, and then you can include that when you actually run the application in production, and based on that it should be able to much more quickly get up to speed. So that's one thing. I tested it with half of the functionality in Java 24, and then it was already a good improvement, and they have me making improvements there also. Then, I mean, garbage collectors have been optimized. Uh, there's also now in 25 uh, smaller object headers, which when I tested that was also quite impactful. It basically means that every single object on the heap uses less memory, and that means kind of running less garbage collection and so on. That's something you need to enable. It's a stable feature, but it's not enabled by default. That's something that I would also definitely look into. But again, to kind of answer the direct question, I expect there to be improvements, but I haven't tested.
Nice. Can you talk to the point that can you use Vaadin 25 without Spring Boot or any
Yes,
Vaadin version?
yes, no changes there. So Vaadin Flow, all the UI components, they work just as well with Quarkus or just regular Jakarta EE with CDI as the main entry point, or even with just regular servlets running in a simple Tomcat or Jetty or something like that. They all work. We have some additional integrations for Spring Boot, like the security configurer, the some of the commercial pieces like Kubernetes kit and so on are also tied to Spring Boot, but the core framework experience with the framework, the components, they keep working without Spring Boot also in Vaadin 25 and beyond.
Cool. Hey, can you briefly mention why lit over Polymer?
While it over Polymer, so the main thing is Polymer is very old by web standards and it's no longer maintained. Lit is also kind of not so actively maintained anymore, but it's still just a much more solid and future-proof foundation. It's a little bit faster to render in some cases. The file size is a little bit bigger. So those are great improvements, but I would say just being more modern is the main reason there.
Makes sense. Let's take one on the CSS theme. Is it possible to somehow simulate the material look with the new CSS approach?
I would say probably yes, but the reason that we will no longer keep the material theme is that material as a concept, it keeps evolving quite quickly, and it just hasn't made sense for us to kind of keep updating along, and using an old material version also looks quite dated. At the same time, the new base theme that will be the foundation for everything in Vaadin 25, it's very flexible, so you can probably with, I mean, it will take some work for sure, but with relatively, it should be relatively easy, much easier than with the old material theme, to just emulate the looks of material in your own application, or maybe someone even does an add-on for it, but we are not planning to officially support it,
Gotcha.
unfortunately, but we have to prioritize.
Cool. Feedback regarding Copilot. Yeah, are there any plans on web training. This is actually something that I can take. Yes, we've been talking about doing webinars, doing all sorts of tutorials on how to use Copilot. As I mentioned, I also enjoy doing vibe coding quite a bit, so I'd love to join a kind of session where we do some crazy stuff using Copilot and see what comes out. So yeah, this is something that we've been discussing about. And if you have any thoughts, like what kind of tutorials or webinars or whatnot you'd like to see, let me know. Just send me a DM in vaadin.com/forum, or just email me miikka@vaadin.com. And yeah, would really love to hear what kind of tutorials and resources you'd like to see on using Copilot.
Yeah, and also with that specific thing, it said cannot adapt the code or something like that. It already disappeared. Could you also just post a question in the forum about that specific thing, because it's something that would be valuable for us to understand what is the cause for that problem also, so we can fix it for others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty. Then Rene is asking about any specific features or plans for Hilla in 25.
Yeah, so I didn't really cover Hilla here because I wanted to focus on the things that most people are using. So it's maybe too much to go into right now, so we'll come back to that later.
Gotcha. Offline mode. Okay, this is an answer to a previous question, which was, let me just quickly show that one. It was related to the polymer versus lit question. Offline mode, Hilla? Yes.
Yes, I mean, maybe elaborate a little bit. So with Vaadin Flow being very server based, if you're offline, it just doesn't work. So then if you need to have offline functionality, then you need to build it with some kind of client side technology. And back in the days, we said use Polymer for that. Then we said, well, now there's this thing called Lit. It's better, so use that instead. And now, as we have been seeing with Hilla and so on, we are moving more towards React for using that kind of client-side functionality to be able to do things while you're offline. But all are technically valid options.
Nice. How about a framework for mobile app? Or maybe a PWA approach?
I mean, Vaadin works great on mobile also, thanks to that PWA support and so on. There might be cases where you would need an actual native application, and that's something that probably is better handled by someone else. So React Native or something like that. So I don't think it would be, we wouldn't be able to compete with those frameworks basically. So we stay focused on the web part of mobile and optimize for those use cases.
Yeah, and you actually can use quite well different kinds of APIs provided by your devices, even with progressive web applications. Another question by Rene. Will there be Vaadin 25 certification path?
We will. I haven't confirmed this, let's say it that way, but I don't see any reason why we wouldn't update the Vaadin certification to be based on Vaadin 25 when we get to the point where that's the most commonly used version. So definitely.
Nice. All righty. Can you elaborate a bit on the Tailwind and how it works together with Lumo and others?
Yeah. So I mean, the main thing with Tailwind that we're looking for is all those CSS utility classes. So those 3-4 letter acronyms that you can put as class names, and then things suddenly become right aligned or get a border or all these kinds of things. So we have so far built our own. It's being part of Luma basically, and we just came to the conclusion that this doesn't really make sense because Tailwind just does it better than us because that's the only thing they focus on, and that's what people are already used to. That's what IDE support and so on. So that's why we plan to integrate Tailwind. At the same time, the existing CSS for Lumo, it doesn't disappear anywhere, so you can still, you might have to explicitly, or actually you already today need to explicitly say that this CSS should be loaded. You will need to do that in a slightly different way, but it will remain for the foreseeable future.
All right. Let's take this one. So, talking about deprecations, can you elaborate on this one?
I mean, it's very hard to make any blanket statements. It depends on how you have been using Vaadin Web Security, but for all the basic, most common use cases, there's a direct corresponding way of doing things with Vaadin Security Configurer. So from that point of view, just look at the documentation that we have already for the new API, and then if there's anything specific you wonder about, then look in the forum. There has already been a couple of questions, I remember, and if it's not already covered there, then just ask in the forum and we will respond there and maybe also update the documentation.
All right, cool. Let me take one more question regarding PWAs. So when creating a PWA application, how to get it in Google Play Store or Apple App Store? Do we have any documentation? I don't recall any tutorials on this particular topic.
I recall something very old, and this is some, I mean, every now and then we get this question also through, for instance, expert chat. I would remember that we have a standard answer for it, but to be honest, I don't remember what that would be. So I'm afraid we will have to leave that question unanswered for now.
Gotcha.
But I'm sure that it's possible. I've seen it done.
All righty. Hey, we are almost at the top of the hour. We did have a few more comments here in the chat, but I think we've covered. Well, we have absolutely covered most of them, the vast majority. So yeah, I think it's time for us to say thank you for your participation. And as I mentioned in the beginning of the session, we have a quite nice surprise to all of you. So as a thank you for participating to this session and staying till the very end, we have very last tickets to the Vaadin Create in October in Frankfurt. And for those 10 last tickets that we have in our reserve, those will go for minus 50% off. And to get your discount, please send an email to roman@vaadin.com. Let me just get the address here in the chat so you can see it. So please email Roman and you will get a private personal discount code. But as I mentioned, we've only got roughly around 10 tickets left before we are fully sold out. So please act quick to get your ticket. And really hope to see you all there because we've got some really nice array of different kinds of talks. We've got 2 tracks going on. So it's going to be exciting 2 days full of Vaadin, all sorts of Java, Vaadin, React related discussions. So yeah, join us there. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for joining our session today. It was a major pleasure. I thought it was a great session. Thank you, Leif. Thank you all, and see you next time.